Hello again. So my video on the FT710's AESS and external speaker got quite a bit of attention, so we're going to keep going on that. And we're also just going to talk about speaker design in general. Okay, let's jump right in. So there was quite a few comments on my video on this AESS speaker, or AESS system, I should say, because it doesn't just include the external speaker. There's some stuff on the radio that works with this external speaker to produce this feature. One comment that I got was that I did not fully understand the workings of the AESS, and there were menu settings that could change the audio and add bass or do whatever I want to make it sound better. And that's not the case, because I can show you here that I've already got the low cut filter set at 700 hertz. And the way that works is when the AESS is on, you can choose either a 1000 hertz filter or a 700 hertz filter. These are low pass filters. So at the 700 hertz setting, audio that's 700 hertz or less will go to the internal speaker in the radio. And then when you switch it to 1000 hertz, audio that's 1000 hertz or less will go to the radio. And then the other thing that was mentioned was that I didn't know about the actual bass, treble, and mid-tone settings in the radio. And you get to those from the radio setting tab. And what that will do for you is allow you to adjust those mid, bass, and treble settings to your heart's desire. And you can see I've got the bass all the way up. It won't go any higher. So this thing is getting as much bass tones as the radio receive section, audio section will allow it. And it's not going to do anything any more than that. But anyway, I just wanted to show you these settings. And if you look in the Yaesu manual, those settings are on page 72, right at the top. And they're adjustable for each mode that you're going to be using. So sideband, and then AM, FM, etc. So I've just thought, obviously I'm in the sideband menu right now because that's what we're dealing with. But so I did want to point that out. I did not cover that in the first video. I should have. The person that made the comment was correct in that. I didn't cover this feature as thoroughly as I should have, but there it is. So the AESCF is the actual low cut frequency. And then when you go to the AESS setting, what that is the actual split between the speaker, internal speaker in the radio, and the external speaker. Now, with this all the way up, it's about a 50-50 split between the internal speaker in the radio and the external speaker. So that's what it sounds like here. If I can find some audio.
About it, so Andy, is I've never used is that Hermes light thing.
So set like that. Let's see. Let me check and see where I was. I forgot my setting. Yeah, let's change this back. So we'll change that back to 700 hertz. And now we'll go back to the actual split feature. So 100% on.
It to connect with the software, and it wasn't the radio.
And what should be happening is the frequencies going to this internal speaker are 700 hertz and below, and then this is going to be a full range speaker. But in Yaesu's implementation, the external speaker is more of a mid-range tweeter. But the problem is that the bass tones coming out of this speaker, to me, to my ears, is not sufficient. That's the problem. And I need to point this out too. So when you unplug the external speaker in this radio, what ends up happening is it bypasses the AESS, and now you get full range to the internal speaker.
You got the COM port and everything all figured out.
Yeah, that's even a challenge for me.
Okay, well, if you're planning on selling it, let me know and I'll...
Now, I've disconnected my little jumper that I use for my bookshelf speaker, and I'm just going to plug that into the external speaker port, and I want you to listen to the change in the audio when I plug it in.
70 bucks. I think $135. I think the complete thing, modification, everything's about $350, maybe a little more.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, that's what I don't know the cases.
Oh yeah, I guess the case was it's all $175. Whatever it is, that's half the cost.
I got it here. I'm not going to use it. I want it out of here.
I'm almost good.
So hopefully you could hear that, but what's happening is when you plug the external speaker in, it activates the low-pass filter in the radio. So normally when you have a radio, for instance, on my FT891, on this radio, when you plug in an external speaker, it disables the internal speaker and everything, all the audio goes through the external. But with AESS, that's not the case. With AESS, when you plug in the external speaker, there's a switch in the jack, and that switch just enables the low-pass filter in the internal speaker. But once again, in my opinion, it doesn't provide enough low frequency response for my taste. You know, tastes vary, but for me, it just isn't bassy enough for me. So that's the reason that I am experimenting with the external speaker to see if I can improve things. Now, let me grab the external speaker and let me zip it apart, because there was another commenter that made a pretty good suggestion. I'm going to try that next. Okay, so our speaker enclosure is back apart. And another comment that I got was that this interior space in the speaker was a tuned enclosure. And that may well be, but whenever you're dealing with speakers, you definitely don't want the audio inside of your box, whatever it happens to be, whether it's stamped steel like this, or die-cast aluminum like a Minimus 7, or wood in a traditional speaker build. You do not want reflections inside of that box, because those reflections will bounce around inside of that enclosure and end up emanating out through the speaker cone, and it will cause the audio to be not realistic. And so that's not a good thing. But another commenter said that perhaps, you know, with this being set up the way it is with just a few holes behind the speaker, that maybe we could improve the sound if we just drill some more holes in it. And that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to take it out to the garage and clamp it up in the drill press, and I'm just going to punch a bunch of holes in here and see if that makes any difference. Now this piece of metal has to stay in place because it's how the sides of the enclosure are bolted on, and it's also what forces this speaker into the grill. So it forces it forward to seal against this grill, so it has to be in place. But if I can improve the air movement from the cone of the speaker into the enclosure, it should add bass. So we're going to try that next, and I'll have to warm up my soldering iron because this is soldered in place, and pop it out of there. But it'll be pretty easy for me to take it out in the garage and just punch it full of holes and see if that makes any difference. But before we get to that, I wanted to mention what my background is. Now, I've been building speakers for 40 years. And at one point in time, you could go into Radio Shack. You could buy components to build speakers. And they also sold books that basically instructed you on how to do that. So this book is probably about 40 years old. It's written by David Weem. It's a really good book. You can probably still find it on Amazon or eBay if you look. But this was my first foray into speaker building. And I built 3 or 4 of the projects in this book. All total, I've probably built 4 or 5 sets of speakers, some of them not matching the projects in this book. And then I went back and got this when it became available. This is written by Ray Alden, and this is kind of more college level math, and it's a little bit more in-depth theory. And the projects in this book are a little bit more advanced. Advanced, that's a good word for it. Advanced speaker systems. There we go. So Radio Shack, back in the day when they were still in business, although I hear that they may be coming back, it'd be interesting to see what that will turn out to be. I'm going to hold my breath on that one. But at one point, you could walk into Radio Shack and you could buy components to build speakers. They had the woofers, the mid-range tweeters, the crossovers, the L pads, so you could adjust the volume of the tweeters. It had everything you needed, and it was kind of neat because you could just go in and buy the components that you needed and build a couple wood enclosures, and away you go. And I still have some of those. For instance, this is a subwoofer that I built probably 35 years ago, and you can see the cone is a little worse for wear on that. I'm going to either have to recone this or just replace the 12-inch driver in it. I also have these, which I built more than 35 years ago. And I kind of patterned these after a company that was making speakers in Ohio at the time called Design Acoustics. I don't even know if they're in business, but they used to build a speaker that looked very much like this. And actually, you're not supposed to build speakers in a cube, because when you build them in a cube, it creates reflections inside the enclosure that are hard to damp out. But what I ended up doing was I used rock maple to build the enclosure, and then I stuffed it with fiberglass, and they actually work very, very well. But that's just to show that I'm not a newbie when it comes to building speakers. I've done it before. I've built several sets of speakers over my lifetime, and that's why when I hear a deficiency in audio reproduction out of any device, I'm going to go in and I'm going to try and modify it, because, hey, that's what we hams do. We try and improve the things that we purchase, or just build them from scratch. So anyway, back to the Yaesu. Okay. So I'm going to warm up my soldering iron. I'm going to unsolder the wires from this. I'm going to take it outside and punch it full of holes, and we'll be right back. Okay, back in from the garage, and what I've done, I've just punched this thing full of holes. And the idea here is that the air coming off the backside of that speaker cone should be able to easily make its way into the box. And also, with less metal up there behind the cone of the speaker, there should be less reflections off of that big square piece of metal. So I'm going to solder it back in and bolt it back together, stuff it, and we'll do another sound test. And we are back together. So let's go back in and let's see if we made any difference.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing the received quality of the AESS speaker on a Yaesu FT710. Testing 1, 2, 3.
And I will take those previous sound clips and I'll put all three in a row so you can hear them all together. And we'll see if there's any difference at all.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing the received quality of the AESS speaker on a Yaesu FT710. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing the received quality of the AESS speaker on a Yaesu FT710. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing the received quality of the AESS speaker on a Yaesu FT710. Testing 1, 2, 3.
I'm looking at a little website, quartzfest.org.
And we already
Thank you.
have, I think, one other person we know that's going, and that's Jason. I think he's going to either fly over or drive over.
Yeah, I was thinking about him. I wanted to talk to him and see if he might want to jungle up with me and start a campsite there or something. Get a few of us that hang out on 7.255. Get a little, find a cactus we like and claim it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, he's been over there all day today. He spent the night and was over there yesterday.
Oh, I didn't know where he was. I knew he was.
I don't know. It sounds better to me, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm sure I'm not done experimenting with this. The next step for me, if I want to continue on with this little project, would be to just get rid of the factory speaker and replace it with something else. There are some really small full range drivers that are available and not too expensive, about 14 or 15 bucks to order one of those and somehow fangle it so that it fits inside the case. So if I continue on, that's what I'm going to be doing. But as far as this episode goes, thanks for watching.